All right, so we're going to talk about the hinge. The hinge is just translation of the hips back a little bit, but really it's rotation of the pelvis over the femur. So we're going to work a hinge, a true hinge, in this fashion right here. Now we're going to talk about kind of the sliding scale of what it actually looks like and the practicality of some things here. We're going to go over a few different variations that we use. So there's over here is a squat, over here is a hinge. This would be a completely vertical movement. This would be a completely kind of horizontal movement of the hip, which would be like a true RDL or a straight-legged deadlift. So we'll look at that first, and then we'll kind of get into the magic of like the deadlift, the hex bar deadlift, the straight bar deadlift, things like that, and we'll get into a few variations that we do. We always start with the feet. Where's our pressure in our foot? We will make exceptions to some of these rules, but we want our feet about hip width apart, okay? We can play with that a little bit. You see sumo deadlifts, and everybody's got their opinion on that. We don't do those a whole lot here. We have a single leg variation that we might use every once in a while, but we want our weight even forward to back. So I don't want to be in my toes, and I don't want to fall into my heels. I'll definitely break that heel rule later, and I'll explain why. So when I hinge, I almost want to coach people to go forward, back, and roll in their feet, and then they can find that middle. All right, you'll see a lot of people when they go down, they'll lift their toes up like that. They'll roll to the outside and lift their toes. Definitely lift their toes. A lot of people roll to the outside too. We definitely don't want to see that right now. Okay, and then the pelvis is going to rotate around here. Different people with different mobility will be able to keep their knees straight or whatever, but we want the shin over top of that midfoot. So as my hips go back, my shin's going to go forward a little bit. Okay. Help them. You can put a band under their toe. You can put your fingers under their toe, tell you to keep pressure on that. But we don't want to roll back into the heel. You'll see people do that. So watch their feet a lot, and that can solve a lot of problems. We want to keep the weight close to us. So as we rotate here, or excuse me, I forgot something here. My glutes and my hamstrings are going to go down. So how far do I go down? That's going to change. So some people have a lot of mobility and they'll be able to get all the way down. And some people have limited mobility and they're like, oh, I feel my hamstrings. The other thing we want to look for is when they stop moving at the hips, that's when we're done. We're at our basement, then we push the ground down to come up. We're not trying to pick the weight up. We're trying to push the ground down. All right, so the depth is all judged by spreading those glutes apart. The sits bones kind of go apart a little bit and the glutes stretch this way. The hamstrings get a good stretch, and I don't want to go much further past that. You'll see people go here, and then they'll move at their spine like that. We never, ever want to move from the spine in our deadlift, especially if we're using a bar or a lot of heavy weight, okay? So we'll be here. We feel that stretch. We push through the ground. Now, I've got a pretty straight leg here, and I'm going to change that up in a little bit, and I'll explain why. But we push through the ground to come up. We keep our weight forward. Okay? So make sure they're not moving through their spine. Different variations of this. The other thing we want to do is we want to make sure the weight stays tight to us. So we never want that weight out. I'm going to show you that's the magic of the hex bar that makes one of the hex bar deadlifts and why we go heavy with the hex bar so useful. So you'll see people when they go down, especially if they have kettlebells or dumbbells, they're going to be here and they'll go down and those arms will start to drift and you see all this space here in between my body and my hand. Okay, that's creating a lever arm, and that lever arm is your spine. Okay, so the further away that weight is, the more your spine is going to get called on to do things. Okay, we don't want to stress that spine like that. The spine is here to help. The spine is really there to do not much for us in this hinge, but our trunk muscles have to stabilize that. Okay, so the further we get away here, the more these erectors and these smaller muscles in the low back are having to stress, and they're not meant to do that. Okay, we'll put a lot more load on them than they can handle. We're calling them to play a game that really we want our butt and our hamstrings to play. So when we go down, especially with dumbbells and kettlebells, keep that weight tight to the body. You can do that by engaging the lats, which is easier to do with a bar, but I try to tell people to glue their arms into their side. I also like to cue them up. As my hips go back, my shins go forward just a little bit. You can see that how I have my shins going forward a little bit. I'm not back here. That helps me fall. That makes me fall backwards. I want to keep that weight. It's going to seem like it's forward because my hips are going back. Again, depth is a secondary thing that we're interested in. So we're not totally worried about getting the bar to the floor, getting the kettlebell to the floor, whatever it may be. especially newbies and especially people when they come in and warm up, one of the things we want to do is work on getting the maximum depth we can. So somebody new that's never done this before is going to have a lot of issue with their with keeping their spine straight. I forgot one thing. I got to grab this stick real quick because I'm going to show you how we coach up a beginner here. Okay, so you'll see a lot of times that people that come in that are new, that have never done this before, are going to round that back a whole lot. So they'll come here and their deadlift will look like that. And it's tough to get them out of there. So one trick that we use is we'll take a stick and we're going to have 3 points of contact here. So the back of the head, the middle of the spine, and my tailbone. And all 3 of those things are going to remain in contact as I go down. So you can see I straightened my spine out there. If I round my spine, oops, I lost contact there in my tailbone. Okay? Or if I arch my back, I lost contact in the mid-back. Or if I do something funky with my head, I've lost contact there. So 3 points of contact, the back of the head, the very center of the back, and my tailbone, I got to remain there. So maybe they get to there and, oh, that's all I can do. Or maybe they start falling around and trying to find their weight. Again, we use isometrics to teach them a position. So get them in that good position, use the stick to help them out. Then they can kind of, okay, now memorize that position. Hold that there. Feel the weight in the front of the foot. Oh, wow, my hamstrings are freaking out there. Okay, good. Push through the ground, stand up. Go back, find that position again. Oh, wow, yeah, I found it a little better that time. Cool. Okay, so using that as a drill to kind of teach the new people or people that haven't worked out in a long time the hinge is a great tool. Okay. One of the things that people also, and this kind of gets more into as people warm up and get a little fresher, or as they're getting into, coming in for the workout. At first, they may come in, oh, I'm stiff, and I can only get a little bit down there, okay? So if we're trying to warm them up, or as we're getting into our heavy working sets, we can encourage them to breathe, and at each rep, we're going to try to get a little bit lower, but they have to maintain all those principles. So maybe I'm getting there, okay, cool. So in my warm-up, I may be here, holding, and on an exhale, I can sink a little bit lower into it, okay? Once you kind of expose their brain to a position, it knows it's safe, it may give you a little bit more. So throughout the warm-up, I may go pause, inhale, and then exhale and try to get just an inch more. Okay, cool. I don't want that inch to come from my arms. I don't want it to come from my back. I want it to come from the hips. Boom. Stretch those hips out a little bit more. Stretch those glutes out a little bit more. Okay? So we're trying to make those glutes spread out to the side, and we're trying to make those hamstrings stretch long. Okay? The warm-up is a great time to kind of expose or to kind of reach for a little bit more range of motion because it's a lighter load, but make sure that they're maintaining that good posture and they're not getting the extra movement from releasing the arms, creating a long lever arm, or here and then reaching from the spine there, okay? That's not where we want to get the extra range of motion from. And you can kind of judge, some people with huge ranges of motion will be able to go super low, you'll kind of see that right away, but they're going to have a tough time organizing their hips and their spine. People that are super stiff, they'll come in and they'll be like, that's all I got. And if we can get them down to kind of their knees or maybe their mid-shin, that's pretty good. We're not really worried about going all the way to the ground unless we have these bumper plates and this hex bar. So I kind of got off on a tangent a little bit earlier. We had the squat and then we had the hinge. All right, really, we're going to live a lot of times in between that. And the more we go towards a deadlift, whether it's straight bar, which we rarely use, or a hex bar, we're going to get more into a squinge position where we're going to have a little bit more knee bend. If we do an RDL or a straight leg deadlift, we do both of those things, we'll have more of a true straight knee. Now, the knee's never locked out. We never want it there, but we will straighten that leg a little bit. So I'm going to show you a couple different variations, show you a couple different things that we'll typically do, show you a couple rule breaks here. So the RDL, we'll start with the straight legs. We'll be here. Okay, we can use, again, kettlebells, dumbbells with this as well. It depends upon the person's comfort. If they're terrified of this barbell or they're a beginner, start them with kettlebells. That's fine. Okay, we can use things like pauses or tempo to make it more challenging at first instead of big old heavy weights. Okay, so I'm going to get my weight even in the front, and I'm going to go down, and I'm literally scraping my legs. You can see how I'm keeping that weight back. That's about where I need to go. Then I'm going to push through the ground to stand up. The other thing people will do is they'll come here. We never want to go there. Now my back is holding on to it. I want my glutes and hams to be working hard here. Okay, when I'm standing up, they're in a short position, contracted. Get that big stretch. Again, initiating that movement from the hips, keeping that short lever arm. That's my stretch. Drive back up. Okay, so I don't have great mobility. Some people can go further, but what we don't want to do is see them go here or just let that bar drift away from them. And that literally tweaked my back a little bit right there. Okay, so again, kettlebell, dumbbell, RDL, okay, barbell, RDL. If they're going to hold a kettlebell or a dumbbell, people often wonder, where do I hold, front to back? Do I hold in the front here? That tempts us to go out this way. Do I hold in the side here? Some people get weird things going on like this. You really want to hold kind of in the quarter, not in the front, not on the side, right kind of here in between is a good spot. And I like to reach down for my heels. I tell them I cue them up, reach down for those heels. If you wanted to make this, one of the other variations that we do on this is a little bit of a split stance. So I'll have one foot in front. We call it a kickstand. Some people call it a B stance for literally an unknown reason. Okay, we can be here. We always ask, where's our weight? It's very tempting to get our weight back in this back leg. We want to be here. Notice how I can pick this foot up at any time. I won't pick it up because I want to give them some stability with that back leg, but I don't want to shift my weight back here into this leg. So I'll be here, and again, I want to keep that weight back here, and then drive through the ground. Make sure I'm keeping that big toe on the ground, and I'm pushing really through that whole foot. I'm not sitting back into the heel. I'll tell you when you can do that. So that's kind of how that RDL goes. We'll typically use kettlebells, dumbbells, or barbells with that. This kickstand position here, the other thing that we can sometimes do, we can put one foot on a wall. We'll do that. Okay, so we're here. Now that's similar to like a rear foot elevated split squat position. We will be further back and closer to our anchor here. Okay, and that'll allow us to hinge a little bit better. I got a little close there. But again, we don't want to sit all our weight back into this wall. We want to keep our weight in the leg that's on the ground. Everything we do is pushing against the ground, so we want to make sure the weight stays there. We are where our weight is, and we want to make sure that our weight stays in that leg on the ground and not sitting back into the wall. Now, we also may do a true rear foot elevated, sort of like that split squat here. This is a little less stable. So I'll be here. I'll show you with this leg since it's the one you're going to see. I'm going to hinge down, and then I'm going to drive through the ground. Hinge down and drive through the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and break my first rule. We talked about keeping the weight in the middle of the foot. If we have a person or we're doing something that day that we really want to emphasize the glutes, so we're trying to do a booty building thing, or they're on a booty workout, or we're just happen to be going on the glutes that day, then we can have our weight fall back into the heel a little bit. So watch this as I go down. My weight's going to kind of fall back into my heel, and you'll feel that glute more. I'll fall down too. We'll feel that glute more with a little more emphasis, and then we'll drive through the heel and roll our weight back to the midfoot. So here our weight is shifting back on the way down, and then drive up and forward. All these things will be much more lightly loaded than like a deadlift. Okay, so we're looking at people that are doing are really strong with this, might have green kettlebells, might have 95 pounds on the hinge. You won't see a lot of people have more than that. Okay, so again, if we're trying to emphasize the glute over the hamstring, we'll sit back into that heel a little more and then drive back to the midfoot. So my weight shifts back into my foot, back into my glute, and then as I drive through the ground, everything comes forward a little bit. So there is a little bit of weight shift forward to back there. That's to get a little more hip extension, which is one of the glute's primary movers. So we're kind of shifting the task into more glute dominant movement than a hamstring and glute movement. The straighter up you are, the more hamstring it's going to be. Okay, so that's more of hamstring and then glute shaping type exercises. What we use a lot for just kind of general overall strength is the traditional deadlift. So I've got a setup here. I want to show us a couple things. We will pretty much always use hex bar. You're going to have to really prove to me that you're pretty proficient at this in order for me to let you use a straight bar. I really don't like that unless you have a little power lifter who is trying to be the world's greatest deadlifter, that's kind of the only reason to use a straight bar over a hex bar. Especially with our athletes that play these team sports or the golfers, there's no reason to use the straight bar over the hex bar. The risk versus reward is just not there. So there's just a lot more stress and a lot more things that can go wrong with the straight bar than the hex bar. But the rules are going to apply, and I'll show you why here in just a second. So we'll have the hex bar here. One of the main reasons this hex bar is so much better, we talked about keeping the weight close to us. This actually gets the weight into the middle of us. So we are able to get ourselves directly in the middle of the weight. Instead of it being forward here, it is literally even with the center of my body, and that doesn't create any forward, backward, or lever arm action here. Okay, so here, my hips are going to drop a little bit more. My knees are going to bend just a little bit more into a more athletic position, which we train a lot of athletes, and we want our folks to be athletic, so that's why we do this. All right, so I'm here. My hips are down a little bit more. My weight's going to be even front to back in the bar. The next thing that's probably the toughest thing that we get is what we call getting tension into the bar. You'll see a lot of people that want to jerk that bar up and just rip it up real fast. Okay, so right now the bar is sitting in the plate, and the plate hole is a little bit bigger than this bar. The plate is sitting in the bottom of that, and there's just this fraction of a milli-inch there's not tension here. So you'll listen here to this sound. We need to get all that slack out of the bar. So it's like we're going to do a 99.999% lift right before we actually pick the bar up. This prevents us from jerking and trying to row it or pick it up with our upper body or pick it up with our back, okay? So we want to come here. We get our feet set exactly the way we were before. We get tension into the hips. We come here. We set our lats. That's a good way to get some tension out. And then I'm pushing through the ground. And it's like I take just a second and then I push through. You feel and see how much smoother that is than this motion right here. Or like that, okay? I'm not trying to jerk it. I don't want to hear any noise. I get that click, that slack out of the bar, and then I drive. Again, just like we were doing with the squat, I'm pushing the weight down. I'm not trying to pick the weight up. I'm trying to push the weight down. Now, we're going to get into a little bit of different body types. Taller people, longer-legged people, people who are very tight, they're going to have a tougher time with this move. Shorter people are built to deadlift better. So if you have someone who's very tall, if you have someone who has a history of a low back injury or is timid about this or it's their first time, we are going to build the floor up so that we take out that last little bit of range of motion, okay? This is one of the things we can do to make it more or less intense. We're going to make it a little less intense by putting the bar on blocks. And we have the blocks. We want the teeth of the blocks to be in the front and back. That way the bar doesn't roll forward and backward on it, okay? And you can see I don't have to get down as low to perform a successful deadlift. So most of the problems are going to happen in that first, when you're coming off the ground, that first 10 to 15% of the range of motion. So now the bar is higher. I'm taller, so same rules apply. I'm here. I sit in the hips and glutes, and then I push the ground down. My glutes and hamstrings get long, and I come back up. If they're going super heavy, they may want to do resets. If they're in a set that they can do, 6 would be kind of the number, 5 to 6 would be kind of the magic number you would draw the line for. If they're doing 10 reps, we don't want to reset every time. We want to keep that tension. It's good, full systemic stress on the body, and we want to keep that tension on there. If they're higher end, if they're doing 3 reps, 4 reps, 5 reps, then we can do more resets, okay? On these hex bars, you'll notice that we have bars that are high and bar that is low. That can kind of mess with some people's height. Taller people would want to have those bars up. It's kind of you're fighting yourself if you build the floor up and you have the low grip. You could just go with the high grip. So just make sure you're paying attention to whether these bars have a tendency to spin. And they will spin when people get out of them. So when they're entering and when they're exiting, they don't want to get out and that bar come up here and they catch their foot and fall and die. Okay. And then also when they're getting in, people won't pay attention. Make sure that before they get in, we flip that high bar up so that this bar is facing up. Okay, that's probably the biggest adjustment that we use. We love using the hex bar, and then we will build the floor up. If it's a super tall person, maybe they need 3 blocks. If they feel like they can get lower, maybe we take 1 box away. Maybe they start at 3, or we take them down to 2, or we take them down to 1. That's a way that we can make this more intense besides just adding weight. Okay, maybe they do their warm-up sets on the ground. That's great. And then when we get into those really heavy sets, we give them a block. Okay, so we can talk about that. You can ask Matt for more details. And then that may be something if people like, I can't get down there, or if somebody's doing the deadlift and they are going short every time and they're not hitting the ground. So it would look like this. They're here and they're kind of going like that. That's going to end up putting a lot of stress on their low back. They have to touch the ground every rep. Okay, so again, we can build the ground up. Okay, if they have a great range of motion, we don't necessarily have to have the ground all the way down there or all the way up there, and that'll help them a lot. Other fun little things, grip becomes a very challenging thing. People here, they think the knurling is really tough on their hands, or some of the ladies don't want calluses on their hands, so we can use the in the bucket over here, these towels live here, and they'll want to put the towels maybe over top of the bar. That's fine also. That can help. It's going to kind of mess their grip up a little bit, but if it makes them happy, that's fine. The other thing we have that lives in the bucket up front are grips. The way these grips work, you loop the grip in, and you have the strip is going to go with your fingers, okay, specifically your thumb. So I'm going to get this tight on my wrist, and it always goes the same direction as my thumb. So that's my left one, and this is my right one. Oops, see, this is wrong. So I'll actually flip this over, spin this around, because it always needs to go with your thumb. So now you can see that the strap goes with my thumb. Get it tight around their wrist. I'm going to show you kind of right here how we do this. People will not be good at this on their own, so we can help them. Okay, you want to get that tight onto their hand and wrist, right onto the bar. Then we're going to wrap it, and the tighter you wrap it, the more it's going to help them. And then they'll grab right over top of it. They can do that one pretty well themselves. Then we get to the other one, and they've lost a hand. Okay, they'll get better at this over time. So just kind of show them, help them out a little bit, get them set here, and then we wrap, and then that's going to squeeze. You're trying to get as tight of a wrap as you can onto that bar here. This will help tremendously. Inevitably, your grip is going to be your weakest thing. You might get really strong with the deadlift, but your grip's going to give out. So I don't want to use the grips for every single set and every single rep, especially in warm-ups in the first set or two. But when they get into that heavier weight, they can definitely use the grips. We've got plenty. I think we've got 4 sets of grips over there. We can always get more. Okay, so remember, those grips always go here with the thumb. They need to be wrapped as tight as possible on the bar. And we can use those on the hex bar, is fine. We can use those on the RDL, that's fine. So again, that covers a lot of the basics of the deadlift. The biggest things being weight is always even front to back, unless we're trying to get into glutes where we can roll back a little bit more. We'll typically do that with less weight anyway, and that just gets a little more hip extension. When we're doing a true deadlift, an RDL, Romanian deadlift, straight leg deadlift, whatever you want to call it, our knees are going to be straighter. They're never locked out, but our weight is even front to back. All the movement happens at the hip. Don't let it happen at the shoulder. Don't let it happen at the spine. Typically, when we load heavy, we're going to use the hex bar. There's literally almost no exceptions to that, unless we're going to stick with a kettlebell. If they don't want to use the hex bar, they can use a heavy kettlebell here. But again, the principles are going to be the same. I'm going to be here, and I'm going to reach that kettlebell back towards my heels. When I feel that stretch here, that's it, and I push up and through. Come back down, push up and through. Where's my weight? Front to back. If I'm doing a single leg deal, is my weight in my front foot, the foot that's on the ground where it needs to be, or am I kind of falling back into here? This is not a deadlift. If I'm shifting my weight to this back leg, that's not what we want. So that's a few things, a few fundamental things about the hinge. It's a tricky movement. Be patient with people. Never rush ahead. Never feel like you have to push them into a position they're not comfortable with. If you have questions, ask Matt about it. It's a fundamental movement that we use. We go through phases where we have our squat phase, our deadlift phase, and then whatever the main lift is that week that we do on Monday, Tuesday, we will do the opposite on Wednesday. So if we're squatting, which we're kind of coming out of a squat phase now, notice that we're doing RDLs with this. So we'll do the hinge on that middle day. And then unilateral stuff is going to follow more on that third day. So if you have questions, ask Matt. Take a video of yourself doing it. Yeah, happy hinging.